What's up, RotoGrinders? Welcome to another edition of FanDuel Friday. I am your host, TJ Zwarych, and we're going to dive into a very large FanDuel NBA slate going on tonight. I am joined not by my man Luch as usual, but we got an expert, an OG RotoGrinders member subbing in here. Dan Gaspar. Tuttle, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, like you said, kind of a late sub, so scrambling a little bit. Wasn't expecting to be doing this today, but I'm excited. It's the first time I've been able to talk to you in a while on one of these, so hopefully we can dish out some useful information.
I'm excited as well. We haven't linked up in a minute, and so this is going to be a fun time. And I had a bit of a cold streak for NBA, but it's reversed, and I'm started winning some money lately. We're back, and so ready to dish out these picks. Hopefully, make the people some money. We got a huge slate and a decent amount of news we're still waiting for, but oddly enough, a lot of the stuff we're waiting for, they're in early games. We got a lot of Q tags: Donovan Mitchell, LeBron James, Trae Young. Klay Thompson is doubtful, but a lot of that is happening in games that start early at either 7 or 7:30 here. So it should be news that we get before lock. Hopefully the crunch time crew will be able to handle that for us. But let's start with this first game of the slate, New Orleans and Orlando. It's a 1-point spread. If Najee Marshall and Herb Jones are both ruled out, we already got CJ McCollum, Jonas Valanciunas, and some good tournament positions here. But if we lose Najee and Herb Jones, all of a sudden there is going to be a lot of value that opens up for this team. Trey Murphy, Dyson Daniels, they're going to have to play some 3-guard stuff. Maybe we see Jackson Hayes or Larry Nance playing a bit of the 4. They're going to be severely undermanned.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they would do that with the rotation. You might see more of a Jose Alvarado too. Dyson Daniels kind of is the interesting one to me there. He's already has a role on this team. At least he's shown that with Herb Jones out lately. And he's pretty good with FanDuel scoring in terms of his defensive statistics. He doesn't do a whole lot offensively, but 3 points for those steals that he's pretty good at racking up. And he's only 4K. I think he's a guy that'll keep my eye on, depending on how this news shakes out.
Yeah, and like if we see him in the starting lineup, 4K for a 30-plus minute role, he looks good. If Jose Alvarado squeaks into the starting lineup, all of a sudden he looks like a very interesting value play as well. And then on the Orlando side of things, we do have Franz Wagner questionable, so it could potentially open up some more value there, but I don't think I'm going to be very interested in getting to too much of this Orlando squad going up against a good defensive New Orleans team. They are missing a lot of bodies, so who knows how good they'll be defensively. But we see a bit of a similar situation for Golden State. Yeah, we got no Klay Thompson, so it should open up Jordan Poole and Steph Curry a little more, maybe some more usage for Wiggins. But playing against a good defensive team like Cleveland, it's tough to know if we want to get to these guys. Donovan Mitchell is questionable on the other side. I think Darius Garland would be among my favorite tournament plays on the slate if Mitchell is going to be out for this one, playing against the poor defensive Golden State team.
Yeah, Garland tore up last game too, and he kind of goes under the radar a little bit. I'm not exactly sure why, to be honest. I mean, I think it's pretty clear when Mitchell's out, Garland's usage rate we can expect to skyrocket. That's interesting to me. I think the Golden State side, they played last night, so we're waiting on news on a back-to-back. We already know Klay Thompson's pretty unlikely to play, but we've seen spots like this where they just rest a bunch of players as well. So we'll have to follow that. The other thing to watch in this game, they had made the change last night to take Kevin Looney out of the starting lineup. This seems like a spot where he'll be back in it with Klay Thompson out. To me, I think they'll take DiVincenzo will stay off the bench and Looney will just slide back into the starting lineup. And they got to match size here somehow against Cleveland. So Looney could be an interesting play if he's back in the starting lineup. Again, he's another guy almost similar to Dyson Daniels where he doesn't do a whole lot offensively, which kind of limits his upside somewhat. But he does do pretty well in terms of rebounding and as well as the defensive categories.
Yeah, I like that call quite a bit, especially the like if we end up getting a whole bunch of Golden State guys popping out here, somebody like a DiVincenzo could become super interesting. Um, if Kuminga happens to be out as well, Anthony Lamb could be a great play alongside Kevin Looney is kind of the only big guys in there, as we also have JaMychal Green questionable. So they're in a very interesting spot. Before we kind of break this thing wide open to look at the slate as a whole, the next game I do want to touch on is the New York Knicks and Atlanta. I was going to say Atlanta Falcons. I got NFL in my brain here. And Atlanta Hawks. No Mitch Robinson for the Knicks here. And so Julius Randle could be playing some extra time at the 5. Isaiah Hartenstein at 4K is looking like one of the better values on the slate right now, picking up 20% ownership. What do you think about the Knicks here? Jericho Sims is we're currently projecting to play 24 minutes, and if he plays 24, he looks like a decent value as well. So what do you think about the Knicks here today, going up against an Atlanta team that could potentially be without Trae Young and Bogdanovic, meaning there's a lot we could be wanting to play on the other side as well?
Yeah, so for the New York side of things, keep an eye out for starting lineups for sure, because I think that's going to shape how the FanDuel slate lays out in general. If Jericho Sims gets the starting nod, he has in the past, I think he's going to shoot up as one of the highest owned chalk options at center. Which again, on FanDuel, we only have that one center, and he's center only. And so I think that slates like that, where we kind of get, or the field gets kind of zoned into one lineup construction, and in this case, it would be cheap at center. Those are some of the most fun tournament slates to play for me, I think, because you can simply, spend up at center, and just by doing that with like a Nikola Jokic, who's obviously just amazing as is. But if Sim starts, drives up ownership at the low price center option, then we can get Jokic for 20% own, 15-20% own, and we're just shooting for raw score in that scenario. I like slates like this quite a bit. So keep an eye out for that. It's not as interesting if Hartenstein starts at center, because he does have that power forward eligibility. But yeah, it's a spot to look out for sure. And then on the Atlanta side of things, you mentioned some of the Q tags here with Trae Young, Bogdanovic. DeJounte Murray would obviously become pretty massive chalk if those two are out.
DeJounte finally playing some better basketball lately, over 45 fantasy points in 3 straight games, got over 50 in one of them. And without Trae, that should bump his usage up significantly, and I think he'd be one of the better plays on the slate. If Hartenstein starts, I think he's a borderline lock button play for me. If he doesn't, I am a lot more wary, because he probably will be stuck in that low 20 minutes, high teens minute range. Yep. Whereas if he starts, I think he could push the 27, 28 on a good day, and that would make me want to definitely make sure I have him in every lineup. The highest totals on the night are 125 or just above by Denver and Memphis. And you mentioned Nikola Jokic earlier. I think from a raw point standpoint, it's always either him or Luka Doncic that people want to go for. They're the top 2 raw point scorers in the NBA this year. Jokic is in a great spot. I wouldn't tell you not to play him ever. I don't think I have all that much interest on the other side of things here. On the Indiana side, Nembhard and McConnell have finally been priced up. I think Nembhard is still a reasonable play here, but with these prices, Hield and Nembhard, Turner, these are just tournament options. These aren't like smash plays like they had been in the past. The Memphis side of things, they're in a phenomenal matchup, but everybody's healthy, everybody's playing. And so these are all just guys that they're projecting pretty well, but to me, just tournament plays. LeBron, if he's out, I think LeBron's a great tournament play as is, but if he's out, Russell Westbrook, Thomas Bryant, Dennis Schroeder, I become very interesting in these guys. I don't know how much I want to play Wenyen Gabriel above 5K, but the rest of this Laker team I'm very interested in.
Yeah, for sure. And LeBron's kind of been, he's the tough one to predict in terms of, he's been playing through the Q tag, sometimes hasn't been, other times. But yeah, like you mentioned, I think Schroeder would be the guy. He's already showing as a pretty decent value on this slate at 4.9. because he is so cheap, because he still has a pretty locked in role in this team. But LeBron's out, then his usage would shoot up significantly. So I think he would be the guy. It's not like he would be flying under the radar or anything. Like I said, he's already showing some decent ownership just because of the price tag. But yeah, he would become a really, really good option as well as Russell Westbrook.
Brooklyn and Utah, Kyrie Irving, one of the best plays on the slate as it stands right now, but this is a back-to-back for Brooklyn, so keep in mind we could get some late injury report news with this team, whether it be Kyrie, Ben Simmons, Seth, Royce, whoever it is, potentially sitting, and that could open up a ton of value on this Brooklyn team as it stands. Guys like Royce O'Neal, TJ Warren, they don't look bad. Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton, potential decent tournament plays, but Kyrie Irving is the main guy that we want to be looking to here. Walker Kessler has been balling, and he's been way priced up, but I still think Markkanen's price tag on the other side is doable, as are Mike Conley's and Jordan Clarkson's in tournaments. But to me, the best game stat game of the entire slate, it's this last game of the night. It's OKC, it's Sacramento. You got a 10.1K SGA. You got a 10.3K Domantas Sabonis, who is questionable for this one still. He didn't play last game. This is probably not news we're going to get before lock. And I just think there's so much potential value that could open up here. And even if it doesn't, then it still leaves a guy like Sabonis who could be one of my favorite spend-ups on this slate. So talk to me about OKC Sacramento. We'll start on the OKC side. Obviously, SGA is tournament viable, maybe even cash viable, picking up 20% plus ownership. SGA's Giddey's price is getting up there, but he's still producing. Is this an SGA or nothing team for you, or do you want to be getting pieces of these other players like Giddey, Williams, Dort in this phenomenal matchup against Sacramento?
Yeah, I think Giddey's fine. Dude's been balling lately, and people don't like to play him for whatever reason, but he fills up the stat sheet in every category. Dort, I think, is a pretty reasonable play as well at 5,700. He had a good last game. I mean, he's obviously not as exciting as some of these other options, but at 5.7, I think he's okay. You kind of mentioned it, though. I think in general, it makes a lot of sense on this slate specifically if we don't get early news. You mentioned the Sacramento game, the Lakers game as well. These are the two latest starting games. I think it makes a lot of sense to backload your lineups because you then be able to swap based off of news if news breaks. And then if news doesn't break, some of these guys are still good plays. Like you mentioned Sabonis is still a really good play if he is active. And if he's not active, you're going to want to make sure you have a lot of De'Aaron Fox. You're going to want to make sure this one's not exciting, but like Harrison Barnes, he's locked into major minutes if Sabonis doesn't play. We could be looking at, I think he played like 40 last game. We could be looking at legit low 40s minutes for him. You pulled up Rashawn Holmes. He's the guy that started in Sabonis' place last game, played 30 minutes, which was a little bit surprising, but I don't know if
basically not being in the rotation. Like,
yeah.
If he starts again, the fact that he has power forward eligibility makes him very interesting.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, if he starts again, I'm not sure I would expect 30 minutes out of him, but it seems reasonable that you could expect Holmes and Metu to equal 48 minutes at the center position for Sacramento if that's the case. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can go. So, again, I think it makes a lot of sense to backload your lineups because people do not – that's where the edge in DFS is in these days. It used to be, as long as you kind of know the sport, as long as you have good projections, you'll be all right. And now it's more being able to adapt to the late news because some of these guys, players will go under-owned because people just don't want a late swap on a Friday night. But if you backload your teams and you're willing to kind of put in the time and effort to late swap, then there's some edge to be had here, I think.
Especially with 4 games at 9 o'clock or later. Like, we should hopefully be getting this Sabonis and this LeBron news before those 9 o'clock games. I mean, maybe we don't, but I think we probably will. And there's just so much potential to be mixing and matching in those 4 games, and they're high totals. Some of them are close spreads. A lot of fantasy goodness in these, especially if we get the news. A lot of these, we're hoping for a lot of these spreads are going to get closer together too. So that's something that I'm definitely interested in doing for tournaments is the backloading approach, just like you mentioned. Before we get out of here, let's look at this slate as a whole. We got Luka Doncic as the most expensive and the highest raw points projected play by a decent margin, over 4 points here. What's your priority going to be in terms of spend ups today? How do you think you're going to be building your lineups? Is it going to be pretty aggressive stars and scrubs, or are you looking to stick in the mid range?
Yeah, I think I typically always do a little bit more stars and scrubs. And I will say on this slate specifically, again, with the thought that we're probably going to want to backload lineups, I'll, it's not a fun stance to take, but I'll probably have a little bit less of Luka than I would if the game's broke a different way. And again, my preferred approach is if we get Jericho Sims starting at center, my preferred approach is yes, he's going to look like an awesome value play, but in tournaments, spending up at center. So I'll probably end up with more Jokic than Doncic just because of those two combination factors. Jokic starts later, and there's a potential that he's going to be relatively low owned if we have a really good center option for the early games.
I like it. I'm in. For me, I do think this could end up being a bit more of a mid-range day than I'm typically used to doing on FanDuel. Just kind of sticking in the realm of like, I love the idea of getting to some De'Aaron Fox, some Kyrie Irving. If we happen to get Trae Young out, mix in DeJounte Murray in there, and just like these quote-unquote studs who are in the 8 to 9K range. I kind of like picking these guys as my spend ups today and then filling out my value with the 5K values as opposed to trying to make something happen with the low 4K players. Unless like maybe an Isaiah Hartenstein were starting, then I would still be in for him. But it's like you said, I don't know if I really want to get Jericho Sims in my lineup today. And so because of that, I think I don't want to go as crazy with my spend ups, and I think I want to stick in that mid-tier 8 to 9K range. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button. We are back every Friday doing this edition of FanDuel Friday for NBA as well as NFL. Dre and I are going to be back later today taking you through the NFL slate over on FanDuel. So make sure you check it out. Still got lots of good contests available for NBA and NFL. Do you got any hot takes for the slate before we get out of here, Tuttle?
Hot takes? No, not really. Again, I think just to reemphasize my main takes is just backload the slate and hope that news breaks in your favor.
I'm with you. We got 4 games, 9 o'clock or later, and a lot of them have some really juicy fantasy goodness. With most of the news that we're waiting for tonight being in the early games, I think we're going to see a lot of chalk there, and getting different with the late games and tournaments, I think could be a way to take something down tonight. So keep that in mind when you're lineup building. If there should be a lot of news early, if you got a busy night, maybe you want to front load your lineup with that early news. And if you got the time, maybe you want to be ready for some late swaps, backloading it. So keep that in mind for tonight. You're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. We'll be back later for some FanDuel Friday for NFL as well. On behalf of myself, TJ Zwarych, Tuttle, Dan Gaspar, as well as our amazing production team here at RG. We'll see you later. Peace.